Chapter 1433. Jaina was silent. She knew that Vasht's words were not directed at her. It was to Duke that Vasht spoke of her sorrows. Jaina secretly sighed. Putting herself in his shoes after suffering 10,000 years of suffering and torture, she thought that she could finally live a good life, even offering her soul and loyalty, but in the end she was betrayed by her master. If it were her, she would also go crazy. But Jaina was not Vasht. She had her subjects and her stand. It was not about right or wrong, just the difference in their standpoints. Jaina found that she no longer hated Vasht. Outside the magic barrier, the generals and ministers raised their right fists and pressed them against their left chests. This was their salute to their queen for completing her great revenge. Before this moment, Jaina had been looking forward to this scene, but now she could not be happy at all. This kind of melancholy was comparable to the guilt of unintentionally killing a civilian girl. She wanted to raise the staff in her hand high and to show off the glory of the queen. The growing sense of guilt in her heart made her arm feel as heavy as 1,000 pounds, and she could not lift it at all. The only thing that could be transmitted to her face was an incomparably formal smile. At this moment, Vasht's pupils that were beginning to slacken instantly shrank. The originally soft and pleasant female voice suddenly turned into a sharp and sinister male voice. Useless. In the next moment, the snake hair that was hanging down and even stiff and broken like a dead snake suddenly grew larger. The tiny snakes instantly turned into octopus tentacles as thick as a thigh and frantically curled towards Jaina. Ah! Without hesitation, Jaina directly used blink and flashed 30 meters away, sticking closely to the edge of the magic formation. However, the dozens of octopus tentacles grew at the same time, like maggots in a tarsal bone. Almost at the same time, they reached Jaina's feet and easily broke through 2 of Jaina's magic shields. Jaina had been through so many battles and had rich combat experience. When her staff shot out an icicle, but found that it still could not stop the opponent, she cast Ice Barrier in time. But it was useless. It was a feeling of powerlessness, as if she was going against the entire endless sea. That kind of divine power that was completely beyond her level easily pierced through the fridge barrier made of super dense ice elements. The tentacles were just a centimeter away from piercing Jaina's body. In that instant, fear froze on the faces of Jaina and every single Kultiras. Even time seemed to have stopped. At this critical moment, an even more powerful and boundless divine power descended upon them. The moonlight was like a dream. The faint moonlight shrouded Jaina's body like a veil, easily separating the terrifying tentacles. The tentacles were twisting ferociously. Jaina, who was tensed up, could clearly see the palm-sized suckers full of sharp teeth extending and retracting in front of her, as if they wanted to grind her to ashes. However, such a short distance was the end of the world. The tentacles couldn't move an inch forward. A pleasant but dignified voice sounded in the sky. "Enzos, go back to your abyss." In the next second, all the tentacles that extended from Waski's head melted like popsicles under the scorching sun under the moonlight. Only then did Jaina realize that she had been hugged by Duque from behind. "Duque. This is..." Jaina was still in shock. Duque gently stroked Jaina's brilliant golden shoulder-length hair, a gentle smile on his face. From the moment Azhara fell into the deep sea, all of the high elves became the slaves of Enzos. How could the dignified ancient god Enzos not discover a mere, ultimate transformation spell? Then, Waski just thought that she didn't become a Naga. In fact, her heart and soul had long been secretly contaminated by Enzos. N'Zoth planted his own power in her so that one day he could take revenge on the person who ruined their plans during the ancient war. That is, me. At this point, Duke was secretly glad that the system had not scanned Vasht and found a problem. If he had not specially found a place with direct moonlight and asked the moon goddess Elun to hold the fort, he would not have been able to do so. Perhaps he would have been defeated this time. If he had been ambushed by that kind of attack at close range, he would have been in trouble even in his own nest. Just the thought of being ravaged and devoured by a bunch of tentacles made Duque want to piss his pants. Jaina's breathing was a little hurried. She widened her bright eyes and suddenly thought of many things. Yes, Waski was so cruel because of Enzos using the murmurs of the ancient gods. Duque concluded without hesitation. All right. Whether it was true or not, Enzos had to take the blame for this. Forcing me to continue pretending you can take the blame. Plan worked. Did I kill Waski by mistake? Jaina gathered her courage and asked. Duque said sincerely, kill by mistake? I don't think so. If you didn't kill her, Enzo's backup plan would never have appeared. Don't pursue this matter anymore. Promise me from this moment onwards, forget your hatred forever. This is good for you, for me, and for the whole of Kultiras. Yes, I will. Jaina nodded heavily, then turned around and faced the generals and ministers of Kultiras, raising the staff in her hand high. I, Jaina Proudmoore, in the name of the Queen of Kultiras, declare that the vengeance of the late King Dain Proudmoore and my brother Tandred Proudmoore's family has been avenged. From today onwards, the people of Kultiras must learn to forget their hatred and treat the Naga and Murlocs who have joined the alliance fairly and justly. Do you understand? Yes, as your majesty commands. All the generals and ministers knelt on one knee at the same time, lowering their noble heads to their queen. Duke I. After sending her ministers away, Jaina suddenly felt a little uneasy. Duque had helped her so much, it was reasonable to say that she should have come to the magic circuit tonight for an in-depth exchange, but she knew that her subjects needed her, and she had to publish the magical image of killing Woski as soon as possible. Duque showed a gentle smile. Go and win over your subjects today. Today you are the greatest queen of Kultiras in history. You must be with your subjects. We will talk about our matters later. A large number of Kultiras left. The huge balcony suddenly became empty again. Duque walked to Woski's corpse. The former queen of Kolaifong was quiet after her death, and died with her eyes wide open. Duque smiled. Fool, you have given me your sincerity and loyalty, how can I let you die so easily? A mysterious aura suddenly began to form in the air, and some unknown factor behind the law realm was restless. Woski felt that her soul, which was about to disintegrate, seemed to have received some incredible and mysterious call. Chapter 1434. Where is this? Am I dead? Vashti was in a daze. She felt as if she was in a world of silence. There was no sound of the wind, no chirping of insects, and neither was there the familiar sound of running water or the feeling of flowing water. She was not on the ground, nor was she in the deep water. At this moment, there was a voice in her heart that was extremely clear and certain. It was the voice of hope. Celia. 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 This voice was incomparably indistinct and distant. It was as if the last call was already 10,000 years ago in the ancient times. It was so long ago that she could not remember it. But in the past 10,000 years, every time she woke up from nightmares, it was this voice that comforted her. The voice that she recognized as her true master. That was because she made a wrong choice and was abandoned. It was not a true abandonment. It was all because of the ultimate transformation spell, left by her master. I've had enough of the queen's self-hatred, enough of her bossy attitude. 2 months after falling into the deep sea, she left Azhara City with some of her compatriots who had lost faith in the queen. Every time her compatriots fell into a deep sleep and no one spied on her, she would take off all her clothes and stand in front of the mirror, admiring her unique body. It didn't have that disgusting long snake tail. There were no scales glowing with an ominous green light. There were no sharp and vicious claws. There were no deformed and horrifying 6 arms. In the mirror she was still as perfect as she was 10,000 years ago. A pair of well-proportioned and fair long legs, a slender and enchanting waist, pink and alluring peaks, and a face that was like a work of art. She once thought that Queen Azhara was the most beautiful existence in the world. Unfortunately, the queen had succumbed to the evil god under the fear of death and became a monster that even she hated. Only I, Vashti, no Celia, escaped this vicious curse. Gently stroking her still perfect body, Vashti fell into some kind of fanatical narcissism. Great Master, my Lord Mark Dooku, when will you appear? Take me away from this terrifying world? I swear I will pledge my eternal loyalty to you. Vashti declared herself countless times. Life under the sea was extremely terrifying. There were giant sea beasts that could not be imagined on the surface everywhere. A lamp-like thing was often a bait organ used by a terrifying sea monster to seduce the Naga. Vashti had personally seen no less than 10 of her compatriots. Because they yearned for the light, yearned for the prosperity of the past, when they were on the verge of a mental breakdown, they directly threw themselves forward. The light disappeared, leaving behind only the malevolent mouth of the sea beast with thousands of sharp teeth. Fresh blood and minced meat floated along with the tide. Whether they were willing or not, they could taste their own kind in their cheeks. The nauseating days, day after day, year after year. It was impossible to survive in the deep sea in human form. If they wanted to survive, they could only use the ultimate polymorph to transform into their compatriots and fight with limited nature magic. Because there was hope in her heart, Vashti, who originally didn't have outstanding aptitude, became even more outstanding. Exterminate the sea beasts, enslaving the water elementals, subduing the deep sea giant. Unknowingly, A large group of Nagas had gathered around her. There were men and women. Every one of her subordinates saw her as their hope and their faith. He suddenly smiled bitterly. My greatest hope is actually my master. This sentence of infinite emotion never flowed out of her mouth. Celia. Celia. The call of her former master would ring in her mind every night when she woke up, becoming her motivation to survive. This voice encouraged her, because her master saw through fate and foresaw all of this in advance. In her bewitched consciousness, this voice had become the majestic pulse of the river of fate. It led her through countless painful times, broke through the fate of certain death, and gave her the courage to lead more compatriots. Yes, this voice was still the embodiment of hope. Master, how can you do this to me? In a trance she cried. Am I not dead? Why can I still feel it? In a daze she suddenly felt as if someone was touching her body. It was cold but gentle, like a mother caressing her. A mysterious power poured into her body, making her blood flow in her body again, driving away the cold evil, bringing warmth and hope. The mysterious substance in her blood flowed faster and faster, to the point that she felt as if there were countless trains roaring in her body. At this moment, her heart was extremely quiet, as if her soul had detached from her body, floating in the air, quietly watching the strange scene in front of her. There was a strange power circulating in her translucent body. What is this? The illusion of memories overlapped with the things in her vision, as if for a moment she had passed through the shackles of time. She saw Azhara City and the Twisted Nether being destroyed in an explosion 10,000 years ago. She saw Stormwind City and the Alliance prospering in the hands of one person. The replacement of the old and the new, the rise and fall of 10,000 years, all stemmed from the hands of one hero. He used the supreme mysterious power of the Bronze Dragon King, Nozdormu, to weave the fate of 10,000 years together. The ancient war, the return of the blaze. Countless creatures threw themselves into it, but only he used his power, strategy and courage to write the epic of fate that belonged only to him into the real history. Therefore, the greatest legendary hero in the history of Azeroth was born. His name was Mark Dooku. No, that was his fake name. His real name was Duke Marcus, the true master who gave her hope and future. 10,000 years of hardship had become the background. Vashti struggled to raise her head and open her eyes. She vaguely saw N'Zoth jump out after her death, and also saw N'Zotha's plot thwarted once again. At the end of the scene, she finally saw the figure that haunted her dreams once again. When she saw Duke's gaze meet hers on the other side of the river of fate, she was so shocked that she could not control herself. She blurted out, "Master, so you never abandoned me?" Vashti saw the confident smile on her master's face, as if he had the world and fate in his hands. "Fool, you have given me your sincerity and loyalty. How can I let you die so easily?" Master Duke's voice was like a morning bell, driving away the darkness and waking her up from her daze. I'm not dead?" Vashti struggled to sit up and was stunned to see Duke walking towards her. "No. In order to atone for your sins, the previous you died. But now I will grant you a new life." Chapter 1435. It was the man who was supposed to be her master, and he slowly walked over in the light. The azure cloak was like the sky, holding up his imposing figure. The white robe symbolized supreme holiness. Behind him, the six-colored elemental brilliance rotated continuously, but also blended into one. His black eyes were like the deep universe, making it impossible to see the end of it. Duke stepped forward, patted her on the shoulder and only smiled at her. "Come on, your resurrection is not complete yet. Brand your soul to Azeroth and become a true demigod." "What? A true demigod? Vashti had yet to come back to her senses. "Even if you can't, you have to or you'll really die." Duke smiled and pointed at her chest. There, the ice sword that Jaina had summoned had melted, leaving a huge wound. If it were an ordinary creature, it would have long been dead. This. Vashti was at a loss. At this moment, a gentle voice echoed around. "Child, don't worry, leave it to me. You just have to follow my lead." Even after 10,000 years, Vashti still clearly remembered who this voice belonged to, the great moon goddess Elune. Elune had once cared for all the night elves, and regarded every night elf as her child. However, some of the elves later became obsessed with the supreme power of arcane magic and abandoned Elune, who they once believed in. These were the High Elves. As a member of the High Elves, it was ironic that they had to rely on Elune's power to obtain salvation at the end. A look of shame immediately appeared on Vashti's face. The temperature of the big hand on her shoulder seemed to rise by 2 degrees. She looked up again and saw Duque's gentle smile. You proved your loyalty to me with your death. Now is my reward for your loyalty. Don't doubt it, don't hesitate. I've already arranged everything. You just have to follow your heart. Vashj nodded vigorously, and then looked at the moon in the sky. She seemed to see the encouragement of the goddess. Then she slowly closed her eyes and used her soul to feel this world. Different. There was a huge difference. After Delano advanced to a demigod in the physical sense, it was only her body that had become stronger, and she could not get any response from the dead and collapsed world, let alone borrow power from it. Azeroth was different. This was a world full of vitality. Although the earth had been injured not long ago, it had healed itself after the abscess had been removed. It was completely different from the dead Delano. Moreover, there was an incomparably abundant space for advancement here. If there was a so-called pantheon in Azeroth, then this great hall would be empty at the moment. Already Vashj felt the world respond to her. Welcome, child. In her haze, Vashj heard the planet. Joining the pantheon of planet Azeroth would allow one to obtain the power of the planet and bear the fate of the planet at the same time. He was ruthlessly stabbed by a sword and even lost his life, but the reward was becoming a god. This time not only did he not suffer a loss, but he had made a huge profit. So, this is the bright path that Master arranged for me. Vashj suddenly sighed with emotion. There was no more hesitation, no more confusion. Vashj walked into the light with her broken body. Late at night, Jaina rolled into Duque's bedroom reeking of alcohol. She really rolled, rolling to the ground as soon as she opened the door. At the door there was a displeased head maid. Duque frowned. Vanessa? Queen Proudmoore couldn't stand steadily. This nasty maid meant, I didn't push her. Duque rolled his eyes, but eventually went over to help Jaina up and put her on the bed. Obviously, Jaina had groomed herself, but she was so drunk that even her breath reeked of alcohol. Jaina's limbs were not nimble, but her mind seemed to be relatively clear. Duque, I'm sorry I made it difficult for you this time. I know I'll eventually follow you to the divine path, but I still can't abandon Kurtiras. Duque smiled. It's okay, I know you're not a bad person, not a twisted and jealous woman. Jaina said apologetically, is Vashj really dead? Yes, but Azeroth needs more experts to become gods to help fight against the Burning Legion. So, she might become a demigod directly under the planet. Jaina stuck out her tongue. I knew a pervert like you wouldn't do something like that. Just because she came back to join you after 10,000 years, even a demigod was casually sealed away. And you still say you didn't touch her back then? Duque felt bitter. He raised his hands in surrender. I swear I really didn't do anything to her. I was busy teaching Tyrant at the time. Really? Jaina propped herself up and stared at him. Jaina's eyes were fierce, and so were her magic mountains. Duque's interest was piqued. When he moved closer, something suddenly happened. Ugh. Jaina had drunk too much and vomited again. The shameless Duque flashed and rolled 10 meters away. He knocked on the door and shouted, Vanessa. Vanessa walked in neatly and immediately smelled the sour smell of vomit in the air. She immediately spat out her venomous tongue. A drunk queen is no different from a female drunkard in a tavern. Like an eagle grabbing a chick, she grabbed Jaina and left. Duque raised his hand and cast an icy wind, finally dispersing the sour smell in the room. The problem was that even if Vanessa cleaned up the master bedroom later, the smell in the air would still need time to be dispelled. Magic didn't work well against smells. Duque scratched his head. It looked like he could only sleep in the guest room next door tonight. In theory, Duque did not need to sleep after becoming a demigod. Dooku was a mortal who had ascended to godhood, so sleeping was more of a habit, a rather luxurious enjoyment. After all, the weave was watched by Karthika and the demon king Vek-Lor as well as the system elves. Mark Dooku, who had been left in Draenor, was sleeping. The system elves were watching and would alert Duque if anything happened. Duque went to sleep peacefully. However, in the middle of the night, Duque suddenly felt that something was wrong. This feeling, woo-woo, amazing. Oh, who is it? Who is playing with a bite of the tongue? Waking up from his sleep, Duque lifted the blanket. Duque immediately saw Vashj's smiling face in human form. Yo, when did you come back? It's been a while. What? What are you doing? I'm doing what you loved to do 10,000 years ago. Don't lie to me. You bullied High Priestess Tyrant every day. I was watching from the side. Chapter 1436. Oh no, dark history. It was definitely a dark history. He had thought that there would be no repercussions if he went back to 10,000 years ago. Who knew that Tyron would be willing to be lonely for him for 10,000 years, and that the little maid he had casually accepted and given a copy of Ultimate Transformation Spell was actually Vashj. 10,000 years ago, it was a world that was barren of entertainment. He was used to all kinds of new variety shows, and when he had nothing to do he would watch movies. He could even go to Bilibili to watch parody videos. Dumok, who had gotten used to this kind of life, was not used to it when he first came to Azeroth. But at that time he was playing Road to Survival, where he was the main character and did not have the time to care. Finally, he did not have to suffer so much, and Duque did not stop exporting his own goods to Azeroth, such as mechanical pinball games, werewolves and so on. But when he returned to ancient times he was still deep in enemy territory, and did not have the time to do these. At that time he was constantly monitored by the Eridar twins, and he was under a lot of pressure. Also, he could not stay for long, so how could he have the mood to export entertainment? Why was the ancient Celestial Empire so prosperous? They did not have the money to light a lamp, so they could only have sex. In Azeroth it was a similar situation. At that time, in order to prove that he was loyal to the army, he did all kinds of evil, and used all kinds of martial arts on Tyrant. What 48 hands, whatever tortoiseshell divine spell, the High Priestess. If he did not take it easy, and if he revealed his true identity and said, "I am actually a good person," he might have really done something like a fallen holy maiden. Alright, the main point was that when he was stirring up trouble, he did not hide it from Vashj. At that time he thought, "Don't you want to spy on me? I'll let you spy on me, it would be fine if they never met again," but who knew if she would come into contact with me 10,000 years later. It was too long ago, and Duque himself had forgotten about it. Now that he thought about it, Vashj was the one who completely knew about his dark history and bad habits. Tyrant was the High Priestess, and after being trained by him, as long as he did not embarrass her in public, she would definitely keep her mouth shut. But Vashj did not have any scruples. The hypocrite Dumok was shocked. "Ah, my glorious image. My hero's halo. It's all over." Duque screamed in his heart, "No, I must seal Vashj's mouth." Just as the thought came to his mind, the system elf ridiculed him for the first time in a long time. "Bitches are so unreasonable. Didn't you already use the Duque divine sword to seal her mouth?" "Eh? That's right. What am I thinking?" The flirtatious Vashj paused for a moment, her sweet voice like a cat scratching itself. "My dear master, I missed you 10,000 years ago. This time I didn't let go and completely offered my soul. This was indeed the right decision. Ah, I am your little maid, Celia. I was, am, and will always be. As long as you don't abandon me, I will use everything I have to serve you forever." At this point, Vasky paused, her face full of fanatical worship like a martyr. "Don't worry, I will definitely protect Master's secret. All of your fantasies can be used on me." "Wait a minute." Dumuk put on a stern face and said righteously, "No. Actually, you misjudged me. At that time, I shouldered the heavy responsibility of saving the world from being destroyed by the Burning Legion. So I indulged myself and pretended to be evil. I'm not what you think I am." "Is that so?" "The current master is very unconvincing." Vashj used the slender fingers of the night elves to tease him. "No, you're mistaken." Duque was resolute. "Really? Really?" Dumuk was unyielding. "All right, please receive my Naga tribe's ultimate technique, Water Spout. Woo-woo, you can even withstand this? Very good, now take my six-handed tornado." The rapidly spinning jade-like hands made Vashj in her night elf form look like she really had the 6 hands of the Nagas. This Dumuk, there would always be a few days in every month when his moral integrity would drop greatly. Other than the times when he was particularly ungentlemanly, he was always a gentleman. It was just that the opponent just happened to catch his flaw, so there was nothing he could do. All the lower limits of moral integrity were man-made. When the man-made settings were destroyed by oneself, then only the will to fight was left. At this moment, in Duque's heart, there was only that incomparably famous incantation, the magically modified version. "I am the bones of the sword. One blood, and one blood. Undefeated in countless battles. Never defeated once and never understood by others. Always standing at the peak of the harem, intoxicated in victory. Thus, moral integrity has no meaning. My body is destined to be born for one blood." Sigh. Didn't they say that Elun would guide Vashj to become a demigod on the side of justice in Azeroth? Why was this fellow so demonic? She had just handed over one blood, yet she was so unrestrained? Could it be that the Nagas relied on waves to swim? Anyway, Duque almost couldn't suppress this seductress. On this side, Duque used the divine sword to teach that seductress Vashti a lesson, not knowing that something almost happened in the Serpentine Shrine. What are we now? Human slaves? Perhaps we were defeated, but our main force is still here. Why don't we even have a decent position? What the hell is this? And I heard that because we once destroyed Kultiras, the Alliance commander Marcus wants to settle accounts with us for Jaina Proudmoore. The news sent by the people below made the Deepwater Lord, Carathilas, secretly shocked. Now the Nagas had almost handed over everything. Even the Kolaifang Reservoir was controlled by the Alliance. Most of the Nagas were sent to the Taroka forest to repair the waterways and clear the wild monsters in the tributaries of the various rivers. If the Alliance wanted to burn the bridge after crossing the river, it would be very easy. The entire Naga tribe of more than 100,000 people, plus the servant army, waited uneasily for a full day. On the third morning after their queen left, Vashti finally returned. Seeing Vashti's new appearance, every leader was stunned. "Your Majesty, you..." Carathilas was completely at a loss for words. What appeared in front of the Naga siren was a true night elf. If it wasn't for the extremely recognizable seductive face that had not changed, everyone would have thought that it was a different person. Fair skin, slightly slender hands and feet, red hair hanging to the waist. If it wasn't for the iconic long ears and eyebrows, they would even think that it was a human instead of a night elf. Not only her appearance but even her aura had changed greatly. If she was a towering mountain before, now Vashti was the entire earth, vast and incomparably condensed. Vashti flicked her hair. "Let me tell you a piece of good news. I have become a demigod of planet Azeroth, and I am the goddess of the lake of Lordimir Lake." Chapter 1437. What? A true demigod of Azeroth? It took a few seconds for the Nagas to react. This was great news. What were the benefits of joining the Burning Legion? They seemed powerful, but in the end they were killed like dogs by the natives in their eyes. The huge demon legion was wiped out, and the grave of Archimonde, the commander of the legion, was 3 feet tall. He was forced to join Illidan, who was part of the legion, and in the end he was beaten black and blue by those bones in Draenor. In the end he ran to the Outland, a place where even birds wouldn't shit, to eat and wait for death. So what if he dominated the Outland? Who didn't know that the core of this planet had been broken, and the whole planet would perish at any time? On this floating continent that was getting drier and collapsing every day, was it really interesting to do the so-called water pumping work? Countless Nagas wanted to return to the endless sea. Fighting with deep-sea behemoths every day at the bottom of the sea was more promising than now. Now, it seemed that they had lost to the allied forces of the Alliance and the Horde. They had lost face, but they had won. Look at the storm badge on Her Majesty Queen Vashti's left breastplate. In the past few days, they had already figured out that those who could have the storm badge were the direct descendants of the Alliance. Every Naga's eyes lit up. It turned out that Her Majesty had gone to seek status for us. In just a moment, all the Nagas present raised the longbows or tridents in their hands high. Long live Her Majesty Vashti. Her Majesty Vashti is wise and mighty. The cunning of the Nagas also originated from the court struggles of Azhara in ancient times. Anyway, flattery would not cost them anything. The guys who had just questioned Carathilas immediately changed their words and praised him incessantly. Vashti stood up, and with her elegant steps, her whole body was in the color of the lake, and she changed back into her Naga form. However, the sinister and evil snake hair was gone. Instead, it was replaced by red waist-length hair that not even Nagas or night elves had. Vashti's tallest right arm swung with force, her cold, clear and dignified voice resounding. "All right, now, as the Queen of Kolaifang, the leader of your clan, I declare that from today onwards, I will take on the role of a personal maid as the follower of the demigod of the Azeroth Weave, Duke Marcus. I will also change my name to Serenia Ubatilia. And our clan changed our name to Storm Naga." The Nagas did not feel that there was anything wrong with changing their names after voting for a new master. Anyway, after 10,000 years, the Nagas led by Queen Azhara had long since split up. The most loyal royalists were part of the group, while the rest were all looking for their own mothers. There were heretics who believed in the long-dead water elemental Lord Neptulin. There were also non-believers, as well as those who directly bypassed Azhara to lick Sea Thun's boots and become servants of the ancient god. Everyone was happy to see themselves submit to a more powerful master. As for Vashti running off to become a maid, if this was the human ideal, it would be a slap in the face, a self-degradation or something. The Nagas were different. After 10,000 years of cruel competition in the underwater world, they had long developed the habit of respecting the strong. Not to mention being a maid, even if their queen was a slave together with them, wouldn't it still be the same? Moreover, when Vashti explained that she was baptized by Elun, and then placed under Duke's command, the Nagas looked at their queen even more highly. Back in Azeroth, it was a terrifying thing to become enemies with N'Zoth, but with Elun behind him, it was another matter. Moreover, being sealed off to Lake Lord Emir was also a smart move. This was equivalent to directly avoiding direct competition and confrontation with the king of the deep sea, N'Zoth. N'Zoth's strength was very strong in the water, but in the shallow waters of Lake Lord Emir, his strength would definitely be greatly reduced. On the other hand, Duke had also solved a potential problem. One had to know that when they ambushed Deathwing Nisario in Lordaeron City, N'Zoth directly attacked from Lake Lord Emir, and almost let Nisario escape. In the past, there was no other way without the conditions, but now that there was Vashti, Duke would never let such a ticking time bomb appear in his territory again. For Vashti, whose strength was only a demigod, a vast inland lake was definitely just right for cultivating her divine power. Not only could she nourish herself, but she could also expand the space. Vashti had personally explored that there was a waterway in the depths of Lake Lord Emir that could lead to the Endless Sea. After the announcement, the Deepwater Lord Carathilas had one last question. Your Majesty, why did you change your name to Serenia? Vashti raised her eyebrows. Vashti was one of the culprits who destroyed Kurtira's island back then. The night before yesterday, the Kolifong Queen Vashti, who had committed countless crimes, had already been killed by Jaina Proudmoore. So Vashti is already dead. The new goddess of the lake, the Storm Naga's chief, Serenia Ubatilia, is the new leader who is completely loyal to Master Duke Marcus. Do you understand what I'm saying? This time Vashti's subordinates all understood. Isn't it just deceiving humans? It's just that she changed the form without changing the dressing. Queen Vashti, on the other hand, didn't even change the dressing. Well, changing the head of a night elf was also considered a head-changing spell. Anyway, Nagas looked the same in the eyes of humans. Wouldn't it be easy to deceive humans? In fact, politics was just like that. Of course, since she was a demigod, Vashti would not let her subordinates have no benefits. The first thing that was given to the most loyal Naga was the incomplete, ultimate transformation. Even if it was a weakened version, it could only allow the Naga to maintain the form of a high elf for half an hour, which was enough to make the Naga, who had been miserable for tens of thousands of years, cry with joy. Next was a batch of epic equipment that had been eliminated from the molten core. The Naga did not have any blacksmiths, and their metallurgy skills were a mess. With this batch of weapons, it could be considered a complete change. In addition, there were also some magic inheritances. After stabilizing the Storm Naga clan, Vashti hurried back to Karazhan. Just as she returned to the top of the tower, she saw Jaina walking out. Good day, Madame Proudmoore. Vashti, dressed in a white lace-made uniform, obediently moved to the side of the road and gently bent her knees in a ladylike greeting. Madam? This form of address made Jaina's heart sweet. She immediately came to her senses and stared at Vashti for a full 3 seconds before finally nodding her head. She only said a few harsh words. I don't care how many masters you've relied on. If you dare to betray Duke, even if you're a god, I'll definitely kill you again. Madam is too serious. Ever since Master Marcus gave me my name, I, Serenia Ubatilia, have never changed my loyalty. Vashti's words had a double meaning. Jaina stared at her again and finally sighed softly, Serve Duke well. I will. Chapter 1438. Watching Jaina leave in her signature midriff-bearing mage robe, Vashti, who was bowing, secretly smiled. Of course I will take good care of Master. This time she had completely seen through it. Perhaps this was fate. This epic struggle around all the creatures of Azeroth and the Burning Legion did not belong to a single person, nor did it belong to a single sage. But for a tiny individual like her, if she wanted to struggle and survive, she had to find the most reliable support. Fate had given her a chance, and after missing it, she had endured 10,000 years of hardship. This time she would not let go of the opportunity no matter what, and as a result she had this feeling of breaking free from the cage and fate, and flying freely in the vast sea and sky. The true demigod of Azeroth, was it not 10,000 times better than the Grass King who had collapsed the Outland? What was the use of following Illidan? Don't look at how he was a king in the Outland and it seemed like he was very powerful, but in front of Duke he was a complete failure. His beloved Tyrant was already in Duke's arms, and his head was filled with endless grasslands. He was addicted to dark energy, but he could not beat Arthas. On the other hand, Arthas was just a pitiful worm that had been beaten up by Duque time and time again. But Illidan could not even beat Arthas. Once the allies reached the Outland, the sturdy Hellfire Citadel did not last long. Hundreds of thousands of fell orcs were in chaos, and 200,000 to 300,000 were captured and killed. When they came to Zanger Marsh, they unreasonably filled up the swamp, and killed more than half of the Naga's precious flying snakes. Fortunately, she saw the opportunity to surrender quickly, and there was still the fate from 10,000 years ago. Otherwise, I always had a premonition that if I didn't rely on Master, I would have died in the Serpent Temple. Vashti muttered to herself, I never believed that there was a hero who could change fate in this world, but Master, you changed me. Vashti was a little self-deprecating. She did not expect such a yearning to be hidden in her heart. Thank you, my Master, thank you for letting me recognize my own limits. There was a voice in her heart that immediately urged her. Hurry up and hold on to this life-saving straw. Gently pushing open the door, Vashti saw Vanessa, who had a bad expression on her face. She nodded politely, then pushed open the door of the inner room and walked in. Vashti, aren't you going to deal with the Naga tribe? Duque's voice gave Vashti an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Vashti first gave a standard palace maid's bow, then replied obediently, Thank you, Master, for allowing me to spread the ultimate polymorph. Now the entire Storm Nagas are singing praises of Master's greatness. Storm Naga? That's the name given to us by our lineage of Naga in order to thank Master for saving us from our ugly appearance for 10,000 years. If the Master feels that it is not suitable, then we will change it immediately. But the joy of returning to our beauty is absolutely not the slightest bit false. Duque could not help but smile bitterly. The elves were particularly vain. Whether it was the night elves, the high elves, or the blood elves, they all boasted that they were the most beautiful creatures in the world. For other races, even if they were acknowledged in other areas, they would never concede in terms of beauty. In order to prove that she was not lying, Vashti even showed Duque the magical video of the Nagas being overjoyed after turning back into the high elves. This was really not an act. Do they know that they are still Nagas in their bones? Of course, even so, they are already very grateful. Just like me, I also doubted whether the high elf I turned into with the ultimate polymorph was my true body or an illusion. But in those unforgettable painful years, this was already the best comfort for my soul. This flattery was really smooth. Vashti took a step forward. The Storm Naga tribe and I are extremely grateful for Master's gift, so we are willing to do anything for Master, even to die for Master. This was a bit exaggerated. Duque sounded strange. At this moment, Duque suddenly discovered that there was a layer of water vapor around Vashti's body for some reason. This was like when Duque was not familiar enough with elemental energy, letting a few energy balls of arcane, flame, and frost surround him. On the one hand it was a connection, and on the other hand it was to raise his level. Vashti was a Naga, which was understandable. But who could tell him why Vashti's white gauze dress became almost completely transparent when it came into contact with water vapor? A pair of long, straight and well-rounded legs, coupled with the hazy water vapor, this was simply seductive. The gentleman Duque put on a straight face. It's working time now. Don't play this kind of trick again in the future. Vashti bowed deeply, and a burst of dazzling white light blinded Duque's corium gold dog eyes. I don't know why, but I suddenly want. Duque mustered up the little bit of moral integrity he had and said sternly, I said, really? Really? Suddenly Vashti stuck out her nimble little tongue. It was really nimble. She was clearly a highborn elf now, but her seemingly slightly long tongue displayed special skills that theoretically only Nagas could do. First, it rolled back 360 degrees. Duque forced himself to be calm. Then, she returned to her original position and did a left flip, plus the tip of her tongue turning 360 degrees. This was a bit impressive. She returned again, this time with a right flip and a half, plus the tip of her tongue turning 1080 degrees at lightning speed. The wall of Duque's moral integrity was instantly smashed to pieces under Vashti's tongue siege hammer. Woo, my moral integrity, it's gone forever. 10 minutes later, Vanessa knocked on the door and came in. She had a cold face. Reporting to Master, a cat that always wants to steal from the wizard tower has disappeared. Jim, is that so? Duque sat behind the wide office desk with a serious face, leaning back on the comfortable chair. I heard that the cat ran here. No. This must be an illusion. Vanessa's ears twitched, and her face immediately turned sour. Dear Master Beast Duke, I have the obligation to remind you that the Magic Mirror Conference of the Alliance is about to begin. Please do it quickly. Good. Accurate. Ready. Dem. So. Immediately. Duke's eyebrows furrowed. Vanessa stomped her foot and walked away angrily. Duke was excited. He had become a great sage. In the sage's domain, Duke began to think about life. He had King gotten his most beloved tyrant, and he had maliciously taken his two capable subordinates, Kaizi and Vashj, under his command. Who knew if Illidan would really become a real villain after acting like one for too long? This problem seemed very serious. Chapter 1439. In the original history, Illidan was the ultimate example of infernal affairs. He had fallen into the deepest darkness of evil, and even his appearance was not human. A mouth full of shark teeth, a pair of sharp claws and a pair of bat wings. Duke couldn't even imagine that appearance, let alone do it. What was rare was that after Illidan joined the Burning Legion, he maintained himself, and at the same time gained Sargeras' trust. In the end, he made a huge comeback and staged a counterattack against President Sargeras. In this life, it wouldn't be so easy for Illidan to walk this path. With Duke's wonderful performance in the ancient war, it would be hundreds of times more difficult to win the trust of the Burning Legion's higher-ups. And the human heart was the most difficult to fathom. Think about it, in history Vashj, who caused the Kaiser and the Blood Elves to bleed, turned from a loyal subject to a traitor because of Duke's chess piece in the ancient war. Now she is willing to lower herself to become his maid to serve him. Why couldn't Illidan really turn dark? This was a variable that had to be taken into account. No matter what, he had to deal with Illidan first and end the war in the Outland. But recently there were a lot more demons in the Moonshadow Valley. The giant robot Doomwalker and a large number of elite demons attacked. Even if they didn't form a battle formation, the pressure on the allies was still quite great. In the Wildhammer stronghold, the mechanized infantry was greatly depleted. It was almost filled with human lives and tanks to ensure the progress of the project. On the other side, in the Blade Peak Mountain, a large number of fell orcs mixed with a considerable number of ogres and golems were gathering. It was unknown when they would attack. My master, are you worried about the war in the Outland? Vashj was clearly a night elf now, but she slipped out like a beautiful snake. She used a little magic to clean herself up, and she was a dignified and beautiful maid again. Duke closed his eyes. You can attend the Alliance meeting later. Yes. Vashj put her hands gently on her abdomen and stood behind Duke in a standard maid's posture. The scheduled time soon arrived and the light in the room instantly dimmed. A projection of a huge circular table appeared in the originally empty room. Every meter or so, there was a projection of a leader. As soon as the battle started, almost everyone's eyes were on Vashj, who was standing beside Duke. She was killed by His Majesty Proudmoore, and after paying for her sins with her death, Goddess Elun purified her soul. She was killed by His Majesty Proudmoore, and after paying for her sins with her death, Goddess Elun purified her soul. After receiving permission from planet Azeroth's consciousness, she has successfully promoted of Azeroth's daughter of the demigod of Lake. Vashj stepped forward in a dignified and calm manner and bowed to everyone. Your Majesty's leaders, greetings. The old Vashj is dead and now my name is Salika Ubatilia. With this brand new identity, I will continue to be in charge of the Naga clan, which has been renamed Storm Naga, and serve Master Duke Marcus and the Alliance. After the master and servant finished speaking, everyone couldn't help but look at Jaina. Jaina nodded. In fact, after I killed Vashj, I was ambushed by Enzatha's power lurking in Vashj's body and almost lost my life. Therefore, the hatred between Kurtalas and Vashj was ultimately due to Enzos. Tiras has no enmity with Queen Celia. We will treat Queen Celia and her Storm Naga equally. Alright, even the king had no objections, so the other kings wouldn't either. At this moment, Duque said, the Storm Naga and its affiliated aquatic races will join the Alliance as an associate organization. If you wish to become a member of the Alliance in the future, it must be proposed by the leader of the Storm Naga and approved by 2/3 of the representatives of the Alliance. Now that the Alliance was so big, they couldn't just casually accept new members. After all official members have the right to vote. Previously, when the Draenei who believed in the Holy Light joined, it was easier for everyone to accept. If the Nagas became a member as soon as they surrendered, many kingdoms would probably be secretly unhappy. Now that Duque had classified the Nagas and the Karaji insect people as an associate organization like the Silver Dawn, everyone felt much better. Agreed. After settling the big issue of principle, the leaders changed the topic back to the war in the Outland. First, William reported the situation in the Outland. It had to be said that taking charge of an area could really hone a person. After the Battle of Zul, Gurub, where he commanded a division, and the Battle of Hellfire Citadel as a commander, William had become more stable and capable. Thanks to Commander Duque's help, the surrender of the Storm Naga has allowed our supply line to be complete. The scales of victory in the Outland War are indeed tilting towards the Alliance. But I have to point out that our supply line is still too long. On the illusory three-dimensional map of the Outland, William pointed out a few locations. Due to Tsar's neutrality with Nagrand as well as the friendly orc clans, they have contacted and allowed them to join the tribe. Although the tribe has increased by nearly 300,000 people in the past week, it's because we have obtained the food reserves of those clans. Now, the pressure on the Alliance in terms of food has been greatly reduced. I have to point out that this is only temporary. Once the tribe subdues more fell orcs, the pressure on the Alliance army's food supply will be incomparably huge. Our supply line has already reached its limit. Now, every train from the Dark Portal to the Honor Fortress is loaded with supplies and filled with orcs on the return journey. At this point, every leader frowned as they looked at the Alliance report handed over by their deputy. Tsar had officially requested for support from the Alliance, hoping that the Alliance could help move millions of orcs to the Kalimdor continent in Azeroth as safely as possible. In exchange, the tribe was willing to be the vanguard in any future battle against the Burning Legion, and they would send at least half of their regular army. To a certain extent, this was also risking their lives in exchange for a future. With the development of technology, the Alliance's army was also changing from cold weapons to firearms. The problem was that firearms were still passable against the small fries of the Burning Legion. Against the truly powerful demons, firearms were completely useless. Therefore they were now walking on two legs. Those who did not have the talent to become professionals were thrown into playing with firearms. Those who had a bit of talent still relied on swords and knives. In many narrow places, firearms were not as reliable as swords and knives. If they attacked the Dark Temple, the compensation for the casualties would obviously be astronomical. It couldn't be better that the tribe was willing to send their soldiers as cannon fodder. But this price, isn't it just food? Just give it to the tribe. Don't forget, apart from the Burning Legion, we still have the Calamity Army. Queen Kalia was the first to make the decision. Chapter 1440. As soon as Kalia said that, all the leaders gasped. No one would forget Arthas. Even though Arthas only played a negative role in Duque's heroic return, the destruction he caused in Lordaeron had yet to be fully recovered. Lordaeron, Silvery Moon, Dalagen, Torrential Fortress. So many capitals had been destroyed or fallen one after another. Even today, 9 years later, not every capital city had been rebuilt. At the very least, the bitter Storm Guardians were still seeking funding from the Alliance to rebuild Torrential Fortress. The pain that the Scourge army had left on the Alliance was too deep. If the countries of the Alliance could barely tolerate the Forgotten Ones, it was because the Forgotten Ones promised not to take the initiative to kill and turn the dead into immortals. The Scourge army was absolutely intolerable. Because the Lich King wanted to kill all the living beings in the world and turn the whole planet into a world of death. Arthas was definitely the public enemy of all living beings. Now that the Alliance was forced to fight everywhere, they had no time to care about the Scourge army. Not having time to care about it didn't mean that they had forgotten it. With the permission of the Wyrmrest Shrine in Northrend's Dragonbone Wilderness, the Alliance, led by MI7 of Stormwind City, had sent core intelligence agents to actively explore Northrend in the northern continent over the years, using special magic tools filled with death aura as a cover. Many excellent spies had been sacrificed, and even those spies had become assassins of the Scourge army in the blink of an eye, causing trouble for MI7. But the sacrifice was worth it. Apart from basically exploring every place in Northrend except Icecrown Fortress, MI7 found the second of the three Bronzebeard brothers, Muradin Bronzebeard, under the seemingly vague but actually extremely clear guidance of a certain psychic surnamed Du. Sure enough, just like in history, he was temporarily brain-disabled by Arthas, who had not yet completely fallen and lost his memory. Then he was rescued by one of the natives of Northrend, the Ice Dwarf. Then, with a shake of his body, he beat up the Ice Giant and became the publicly elected boss of the Ice Dwarfs. Now that this matter had alarmed Magni Bronzebeard, the Dwarf King abandoned his own country, and led a small fleet led by the Heavenbreaker to the Whispering Coast of Lordaeron. This was because the ship that would pick up Muradin would be there soon. The veins on Magni's fists were bulging and his exact words were, "Amnesia?" It doesn't matter, I will give an iron fist of love to that rascal who can even forget his own brother. I guarantee he'll remember everything. Originally, Magni wanted to fly directly to No Scent, but the problems with the flying battleship forced him to give up on that plan. The Iron Furnace Castle itself was in a world of ice and snow. The dwarves' products were only slightly less effective in the heat, but they also had enough anti-freezing equipment. The problem was that the device was suitable for -10 degrees Celsius, but it would fail at -40 degrees Celsius. This was not a problem that could be solved with antifreeze oil. If the Alliance wanted to attack Nascent's ice-crowned fort, all their heavy equipment couldn't be used. In other words, forcefully attacking meant sacrificing human lives. It would be great if the tribe was willing to be the vanguard. It was true that the Alliance was under a lot of pressure in terms of food and economy. As long as the Horde did not start a war with the Alliance and continued to be hostile to the Cataclysm, it would be a good bet. There were 3 rich countries with the most surplus food in the Alliance. Lordaeron, who purified the eastern plaguelands and revived the Tirisful Glades. New Alterac, who opened up the Hillsbrad Plains and took over thousands of miles of fertile land during the Second Battle of the Dark Portal. Stormwind, who owned the Western Plains, formerly the Western Wilderness, Elven Forest, and the 3 major grain-producing areas in the north of Stranglethorn Vale. Due to the principle of proximity, the food transported to the outer regions was basically provided by Stormwind. Stormwind was already having a hard time. However, Kalia took the lead to settle the food for the Horde immigrants. Due to the principle of advancing and retreating together, Illusia made the decision on the spot. With the support of the 3 major grain-producing countries. The Alliance's decision was also passed. Next question. William heaved a sigh of relief. Due to the large number of Orc immigrants crossing the border, there is still enough food in the outer regions for a short period of time. My logistics minister told me that the food shortage in a month's time is estimated to be no less than 300,000 tons. This question made the leaders of the Alliance frown. The Dark Portal couldn't be opened for a long time. This was because teleportation meant a huge loss of energy. Where did the energy come from? After the Cursed Land became a barren wasteland, the energy to open the teleportation portal basically came from the outer regions. The Dark Portal absorbed the surrounding energy to maintain itself. This formed a paradox. If they wanted to increase their supplies, they needed more energy. Absorbing more energy might cause Draenor's collapse to accelerate. If they were not careful, they would lose everything and everyone in the outer regions would die together. Moreover, before the Orcs were completely evacuated, the Horde would not allow the Alliance to destroy Draenor. Otherwise they would not hesitate to start a war. At this moment, Vashj, who was beside Duque, raised her hand gently and requested to speak. Seleka, go ahead. Duque called out Vashj's name. The Storm Nagas can supply a portion of the food from the outer regions. Because there is no pollution in the Serpent Lake, the polluted water has already been drained to the swamp further west through the pipes. If we were to release the harvesting. Vashj glanced at Tyrande and changed her words. If we can ensure a sustainable supply, the Storm Nagas can provide 200,000 tons of unpolluted fish to the surrounding 4 regions every month. What about further? William asked. The fish will rot. Duque pondered for a moment. Under the premise that we don't fish out all the fry, what is the maximum output of Zangermarsh per month? 500,000 tons. Vashj's answer made the big shots of the Alliance gasp in surprise. Duque decided. 400,000 tons per month. Half of it will be supplied in the form of fresh fish, and the other half will be supplied by the Alliance to be salted into salted fish for the Horde's immigrants to eat. No one would have thought that the Storm Nagas could actually solve the biggest food problem by relying on them. From the looks of it now, the Naga tribe had turned from the biggest obstacle to the biggest help. The Alliance had really profited. Wow, Duque, I really envy you. Let's see when the Wildhammer dwarves will also take in a vassal race to play with? Kudrin Wildhammer laughed. You can take in the harpies. Duque's words killed Kudrin. Kudrin's face turned green as he thought of the harpies who would gang up on him because of the language barrier. Alright, let's stop joking. William, do you have any more questions? One last question. It is impossible for our forces to fight at full strength on both fronts. If possible, I hope to cooperate with the Horde to solve the Blade Peak and Netherstorm regions first. William pointed to the northern part of the outer regions map. Chapter 1441. Firstly, there are fell orcs attacking from behind. Even if the Storm Nagas help us block the attack from the Blade Peak mountain, we still can't rescue the Draenei and Kale, that's blood elves who are trapped in the storm fortress. Secondly, we know too little about the Moon Shadow Valley. If we launch an all-out attack, the Burning Legion might ambush us from behind. Also, the Moon Shadow Valley is too vast. We need one or two large fortresses as a base. Actually, William was more worried about something else. The Alliance now had flying battleships and could play with heavenly justice. But the Burning Legion had space battleships and could also play with demons from the sky. The troops that tried to attack the Moon Shadow Valley were destroyed by the hellfire that fell from the sky several times. Draenor did not have a planetary protection array, and this so-called atmosphere was not fortified. The current technology was not reliable at all in terms of air defense. Only the magic tower was more effective. This meant that the attack on the Darkness Shrine would not be done in one go. It had to be pushed forward slowly. In a situation where there were worries and there was no forward base, it would be easy to get into trouble if they rashly sent in all their troops. However, it was not easy to repair the forward base while resisting the attack of the demons in the Moon Shadow Valley. Hence, William pushed the responsibility to him. They could either give him more troops or help him resist the enemies in the Moon Shadow Valley. It would be best if the forward base could be repaired before the army returned. No leader raised any opinions on the spot. Everyone looked at Duque. This time, Duque was a little ungrateful. He said that he would let William be the commander of the expeditionary army. In the end, when they finally conquered the Hellfire Fortress, Duque got his substitute to do the work secretly and took over Vashj. Of course, William also knew that it would be difficult for him to monopolize power in the Outland. Firstly, he did not have the status and qualifications to control Thrall. He had no choice but to kick the ball back to Duque. Duque thought for a moment and made a decision. My substitute, Mark Dooku, will be in charge of building the Wildhammer Fortress as a forward base. During this period, Kudrin, Bulang, Lillis, Vashj and their subordinates will be under Mark Dooku. Yes, Sir Willan, please send an elite troop to assist us. Understood. Understood. Yes, Master. No problem. All the leaders agreed. Duque turned to face William's projection. I'll give you 3 months at most. In at most 3 months, I hope to see your main force return with the Draenei and Kale, that's division. Leave it to me. William patted his chest. The next day, a flock of griffins flapped their wings and passed through the dark, psychedelic night sky. Behind the Griffin Knights was a rather scattered fleet of airships. The entire fleet departed from Fort Glory and took a detour around the thorny rocky grounds. They didn't enter Fort Windrunner but directly flew north and entered Moon Shadow Valley. Along the way there were many accidents. For some unknown reason, both the man and the griffin exploded in midair. He had also personally witnessed the scene of a plane full of people and goods crashing in the sky. The laws of the Draenor world seemed to be crumbling. There was no possibility of rebuilding this special world that lacked a core and only had a few continents floating in the void. In any case, Delano would obviously die in the long river of history faster than in the original history. As the fleet swept across the dark land west of Moon Shadow Valley, the power of the dark energy could be seen eroding the entire Moon Shadow Valley. It could be seen without binoculars as the dark energy was rampant on this continent. The highly concentrated energy had attracted the demons in the void. Almost all the demon species of the Burning Legion could be found here. Imps, Cerberus, demonic guardians, dread guardians, Shivala, Doomguard. There were even groups of demons gathering and swarming towards the center of Moon Shadow Valley where the mana smelting pool and other areas with high energy response. Looking down from the sky, it looked like a wave of darkness. Hoof Imriel, who was standing beside Mark Dooku, shuddered. Seeing the place where she used to live turned into such a ghastly state, she thought of the temple of Karabaer that she had stayed in for a long time becoming a temple of darkness. She shuddered. Bulang complained, "Hey, we're really going to build a city here. Are you mentally prepared to lose 100,000 dwarven boys? Thinking of relying on less than 10,000 dwarves to build a city in a place surrounded by demons?" Bulang's scalp went numb. After all, when the construction of the Wildhammer Fortress failed, more than 3,000 people died, and the 5,000 who came back were all injured. 3,000 people did not sound like a lot, but many of them were elite dwarven engineers and craftsmen. Bulang's heart ached. Dwarves had long lifespans and a long growth period. No matter how they encouraged reproduction, it was not easy to make up for the losses in war. At this time Duque smiled. "I'll be in charge of this, don't worry. When have I ever let you down?" At this moment, Vashj's magical message came. "Master, everything is ready. Let's begin." After Duque gave the order, there was silence for a few minutes. If one was not familiar with Duque, they might think that Duque was pretending to be a fool. At this moment, from the direction they flew from, a silver line suddenly appeared, stretching from north to south for who knows how many kilometers. Rumble, a shocking and terrifying sound came from far and near. This is. His hooves gripped the side of the ship, and even his tail that always swung around stopped moving. *CK. So generous? Bu Lang's jaw dropped, and even the wine bottle in his hand fell to the ground. Duque's smile was full of absolute confidence. I've always been generous. It was a water line that connected heaven and earth. Innumerable huge waves of several tens of meters high rushed towards the Moon Shadow Valley from west to east. The surging waves showed what it meant to be a raging wave. Whether it was the black land, the wooden houses built on the hills by the old beastmen, or the ferocious demons that were wreaking havoc on the land, they were all easily swallowed by this terrifying wave. The muddy tide easily filled up every low-lying area of Moon Shadow Valley within his field of vision. Imriel covered her mouth with her hand. She had witnessed Duque's miraculous actions more than once. Filling up the lake like a whip to stop the flow, a big move that flooded half of Moon Shadow Valley. This imagination, this ability to execute. Is Mark Dooku really an ordinary Radiant Moon Great Wizard? Imriel's curiosity was about to explode, almost causing her to suffer internal injuries. Duque casually pointed, and that finger seemed to be pointing at everything. Actually, the bottom of Zanger Marsh is very big and the lakes in the swamp are very deep. Because Vashj used a water pump, almost all of Draenor's water was concentrated in the Serpent Lake. What I'm doing now is just letting Vashj return the water that she took back to the east of Terakur Forest. Chapter 1442. Bulang's eyes flashed. And then you get someone to blow up the higher entrance of the Moon Shadow Valley, and let the massive amount of water pour into the valley? Duque smiled. Everything was calculated by the system. After scanning the topographic map of the entire Moon Shadow Valley, the system elf prompted Duque if he wanted to do Guan Er Gu drown the 7 armies. Duque decisively clicked yes. When he came to the Moon Shadow Valley as a player before he transmigrated, he did not think that it was that bad. At most, it was the depressing sky, the slightly nauseating atmosphere and the color rendering. Only when he came to the Moon Shadow Valley did he realize that it was not a place for people to stay. On the black land eroded by the dark energy, there was a dry and stinky wind everywhere, and the air was filled with a nauseating smell. There was no clean water to be found. After flying on the Griffin for a whole day, all he saw was a neon green dark energy lake. That bright green color easily made people think of something like nuclear cola, radiation sickness, and the like. Duque strongly suspected that staying in this place for 3 months, any normal person would become demonic, and become neither human nor ghost. The dwarves who tried to build the Wildhammer fortress had to dig deep wells to extract the muddy water, filter it, and then pour large bottles of Shotrath holy water to neutralize it before they dared to drink it. Building a castle, even if it was mechanized, was heavy physical labor. Water was essential or else people would die. Since he had to clean up the scattered demons, Duque might as well flood the entire western half of the Moon Shadow Valley. Looking down from the airship, this sea-like scenery could not be said to be boundless, but it had an even more shocking effect. The airship fleet was less than 20 kilometers into the Moon Shadow Valley, and geographically, they had just come in through the narrowest funnel-shaped entrance on the ground. If the waterline came from the west, they could barely see the end of the waterline, but as the Moon Shadow Valley's basin-like structure moved from west to east, the area of flat land became larger and larger. After the waves pushed over, it formed a long arc so long that the end could not be seen. Only at the north and south sides of it, the end could barely be seen. Because the sky above the Moon Shadow Valley was shrouded in a large amount of demonic fog, the lighting was quite poor. Even with binoculars, one could only see the undulating shadows. Even though he knew that it was the mountain range that surrounded the entire Moon Shadow Valley, he still felt as if it was the border between the sea and the void, as if it was merely the dark oil paint of a painter's brush. Under the outline of the long mountain ranges in the north and south, there was a lake that was muddy and a bit green. It couldn't be said to be boundless, but the feeling of washing away all the rubbish was quite satisfying. The flying fleet continued to advance. After more than an hour, they arrived at the location of the abandoned Wildhammer stronghold. It was a typical hill. Although it was not too high, it was still more than 100 meters above the valley floor. The corpses that they didn't manage to retrieve in time had already been devoured by wild beasts until only a few bones were left. The remnants of the abandoned city walls still had the incomparably tyrannical claw marks of the evil demons. But now, everything was different. Hellfire, aren't you very powerful? Burn everything, burn, burn. Do you have the ability to evaporate this sea-like lake? Helldog, aren't you very fast? Do you have the ability to accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in water for me to see? Although the old site of the Wildhammer stronghold in the southern mountain range now looked like a lone island in the middle of the ocean, the Burning Legion, who were only good at land and air battles, had no way of passing through this vast lake. Coming down from the flying battleship, Mark Dooku and his men stood at the edge of this peninsula, their expressions extremely relaxed. Bu Lang called out to his men, "Little bastards, hurry up and get to work. I want to see a beginner-level beach blocking position with anti-air firepower within half an hour." Kudrin Wildhammer got down from his Griffin King Scarlet. They had been flying for 3 hours since they left Fort Windrunner. Even the Griffin King was a little tired, let alone the other Griffins. "Yo, Duque, can't you get your Storm Naga to control this area of water? Then we only need to guard against the enemies coming from the sky." Duque shook his head and pointed to the fluorescent green surface of the water. "You swim in it every day. If there's no holy light to help you expel the evil energy in your body, let's see if you'll turn into a demon." If not for the large amount of evil energy in the water, Duque would really have mobilized the Naga to defend. After all, the demons of the Burning Legion were almost all-terrain creatures. Many demons could breathe better, and even if they could not, they could make do. Duque had seen the records. In the past 25,000 years, the Burning Legion could even conquer and destroy the gaseous creatures of the gaseous planets, let alone a small water attack. This was just an obstacle, not an insurmountable moat. Of course, the small-scale Naga troops were still prepared. There was 1,000-strong elite Naga team on the transport ship. If the pressure on the front line was too great, Duque would invest in this team of Nagas. At most, he would use the diluted holy water of Shotrath City to bathe the Nagas. However, for 3 days in a row there was no danger. There were indeed demons emerging from the water like the Loch Ness Monster, but there were not many who actually attacked the fortress in the building. More of them were the instincts of the low-level demons driving the scattered demons to break into the fortress defense circle. They came at irregular intervals. Sometimes it was just 1 or 2 hellhounds coming to deliver food, and sometimes it was a whole team of demon guards. This was a pain in the ass for the defenders. They could only deploy as many troops as possible, divided into 4 teams and rotated every 2 hours. Each time, there would be no less than 3,000 troops stationed on the shore. After 3 days, even if they ran to stand for 2 hours every 6 hours, the morale of the troops was clearly low. After all, no one knew how many demons would follow after the first one emerged from the water. Sending out Naga scouts was not a good move. There was a lot of green evil energy in the water, and the water was murky. The range of detection was quite limited, and there were Nagas who were killed and could not come back. "Well, this is forcing me to use my ultimate move." Duque sighed. On the morning of the 4th day, on the makeshift dock, everyone saw a strange new machine that extended part of its parts into the water. Duque stood in front of the machine and proudly announced to a group of dwarves, gnome craftsmen and scientists, "Hello everyone, welcome to the latest masterpiece of Marcus Future Technology Company, Limited, the underwater sonar system." Sonar is an electronic device that uses the transmission characteristics of sound waves underwater, and through electroacoustic conversion and information processing, it completes underwater detection and communication tasks. Our new passive product belongs to the category of acoustic positioning. By monitoring the noise in the water, we can roughly determine how many enemies are coming and what their size is. Chapter 1443. Passive Sonar. Passive sonar technology refers to the sonar passively receiving the radiation noise produced by underwater targets such as ships and signals emitted by underwater acoustic equipment to determine the position and distance of the target. It evolved from a simple hydrophone. It listened to the noise emitted by the target and determined the position and some characteristics of the target. It was especially suitable for situations where one could not make a sound and had to detect the movements of the enemy ships. Duque definitely wanted to make an active sonar, but the problem was that even if he kept instilling advanced technology into the scientists of Steel Stove Fort and Storm City, with the industrial level of this era, it was impossible to make it. For example, the sealing technology of this era was not up to standard at all. The ship's steel plates made of willow nails and welded together were still passable on the water, but when the pressure was higher underwater, it would be like a fountain everywhere. That experiment almost cost 2 senior scientists and a bunch of engineers. They could only settle for the next best thing, which was to make a coastal sonar. Of course, in order to locate the target more clearly, he had people set up a sound transmission device 500 meters away from the water's edge and not too deep. Duque controlled Mark Dooku. With a pretentious smile on his face, he twisted the button of the sonar device. From the loudspeaker, everyone could hear a very rhythmic beep, beep, beep sound. Duque continued to explain, "This is the sound we actively emit. We only need to listen for any clutter in the echo and we can roughly determine the enemy's position and number." Before Duque could finish, a loud sound suddenly came from the loudspeaker. Thump 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 thump. Duque was stunned when he heard this. A bunch of extremely imaginative dwarves suddenly began to make all sorts of comments. "This sound, it sounds so real. It feels like there's something beating in this thing." Bulang was the first to speak. "Yeah. Could it be the footsteps of demons walking underwater?" Comrade Kudrin's imagination ran wild. "Yeah, most demons can't swim. They do walk underwater. But this sound is a little too sharp and clear. Shouldn't the sound underwater be a little more vague?" Bulang retorted. Only Duque's face turned green. As a veteran who has watched classic submarine war movies such as U-571, he certainly knew that this had nothing to do with sonar. With just a scan, the system found out what was inside the heavily guarded sonar system that he treated like a treasure. It was actually a bunch of little iguanas. Many of the Alliance's soldiers on the Draenor continent must have seen many of these annoying fairies. Although these palm-sized iguanas didn't have powerful attacks and didn't have strong bodies, and they looked easy to bully, they always moved in groups. It reminded you of a nostalgic species on the Azeroth continent. That's right, Murlocs. Woo 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 woo. However, these fairies were not as annoying as the Murlocs. The first time they saw the iguana, they thought it was a little scary. They had the heads of frogs, sharp teeth, small eyes, rough claws with 4 fingers and a wretched figure. However, after seeing them many times on the Draenor continent and slowly getting used to it, you would realize that they were a little cute. Would be weird. Duque was furious. The sonar was his treasure. When he was not sure that Vashj was Silegia, the sonar was his ultimate weapon against the Nagas. Who dares to put a group of little iguana people in my latest invention? There was only one answer, Duque's roar resounded through the entire shore. The hoof, who was standing not far away, heard Duque's roar. How could she not know that she had been exposed? Her whole body stiffened for a full second as if she had been electrocuted. Then she shrank her head and actually wanted to sneak into the crowd and run away. The problem was that her mind was in a mess. She did not realize that she was surrounded by dwarves. She was more than a head taller than the dwarves. This stupid attempt to cover up made Duque even angrier. He immediately flashed over. "Ah!" Imriel screamed, turned around and galloped away. "Run? Why are you still running?" Duque was quick and grabbed the hoof's tail that was seriously lagging behind. The hoof's body stiffened again as if she had been electrocuted. Duque grabbed the hoof's waist and directly lifted her like a sack of rice. "Someone disassemble the sonar system. First, get rid of the little iguana people inside. I will first teach this idiot a lesson." The hoof screamed. The holy light education of a Karabo apprentice made her not dare to lie. No, I know I was wrong. I saw that your big iron box was empty and thought it was useless. It just so happened that Han Lin had pissed me off last time, so I wanted to give him some little iguana people. I really did not want to destroy your important new equipment." Who knew that Duke would get even angrier? Your King prank destroyed the latest invention of Marcus Future Technology Company Limited. Begging for mercy is useless. This time, I must teach you an unforgettable lesson. Duque strode forward with the hoof on his shoulder and rushed into an empty storeroom by the shore. He sat down directly and pressed his knee against the hoof's lower abdomen. He grabbed her tail and fiercely spanked her butt. No. Don't spank me." Or cried. She really cried. She had never been spanked in her entire life. Beside the storeroom, everyone was speechless. What was up with this combination? Even the Draenei garrison officer did not know what to say. They had also seen the advanced technology of the Alliance. To the Draenei universe, the technology of the Alliance was very basic. The problem was that the Draenei's own technology had been lost in the 25,000 years of escape. Because Draenei scientists had died in various accidents, most of the knowledge and technology had been lost. Many of the machines did not even know how to use, so their most reliable weapons were warhammers and holy light. Under such circumstances, being spanked was already a small punishment for their contact who had destroyed the advanced technology of the Alliance. According to the military law of the Alliance, if this Mark Dooku wanted to kill her, they would not know how to plead. 5 minutes later, Duque came out angrily, followed by a hoof who was covering her red and swollen butt. Do you still dare to mess around? Duque asked angrily. Sob sob sob. The hoof was crying. I'm asking you a question. Sob sob. I don't dare anymore. The hoof looked aggrieved, like a young wife who had just been harassed by a hooligan. At this moment, Duque still did not know that because he had spanked the hoof had actually covered her, but every time she saw him, perhaps in the hoof's eyes, the word, hooligan, had already been carved on Mark Dooku's forehead, and it could never be washed away. Chapter 1444. No dash. Wait, you're not going to spank me today, are you? I can work, but you have to swear that if I make a mistake today, you won't spank me. This was what happened when Duque met the hoof almost every day. A good hoof with a bright future. In theory, he could become an archbishop's hoof. Why did he become a crazy woman with persecutory delusions after being spanked once? Do you know how many players who had delusions about you in the past will be in despair now? Duke clutched his head in pain, his face full of black lines. Duque, are you not feeling well today? The hoof came over to ask Duque with concern, still clutching his butt. What the hell is this? Are you doing this out of kindness or to piss me off? Or to piss me off out of kindness? Duque wanted to strangle Imriel. Duque could not take it anymore and decided to have a showdown with the hoof. I, Mark Dooku, swear in the name of the weave demigod Duke Marcus that as long as you don't cause trouble and destroy the Alliance's cutting-edge equipment, I will definitely not punish you. Otherwise, I will let the weave demigod give Mark Dooku the most tragic destruction. Wow. Everyone was shocked. Because Duque said this in the command center. When he said this, the two kings, Gavasht, and a bunch of lords with titles of generals all heard it. Duque was controlling Mark, a delicate puppet. This was something only those who had the qualifications to attend the highest meeting of the Alliance knew. Bulang and Kudrin rolled their eyes, completely speechless. Alright, this guy was Duque. Who the hell would go back on his word to punish himself? But the others did not know. The group of generals sighed at the seriousness of this guy's oath. Imriel was naturally the first to fall for it. Really? The hoof did not panic, his butt no longer hurt and his legs became nimble. He came over eagerly. It's true. If Mark Dooku lied to you, then he's not human. A certain Dooku who was disguised as Mark swore that it had nothing to do with him. The hoof who did not know how sinister people's hearts could be believed. She was so moved that she almost burst into tears. She grabbed Mark's hand and said excitedly, Okay, I was wrong about you. Master Willan said that my holy light theory is already the strongest, but I need more experience to elevate my spirit and make my holy light even purer. Mark, since you're the boss here, give me a mission. I've been watching those dwarves build the city all day. I'm going crazy from boredom. With a smile on his face, Duque announced, Imriel, lead your troops to attack Illidair's sentry post on the west side of this place. Just use your garrison, the Highland Warriors Group, and 7 other organizations. That's a total of 2,000 people. The hoof was dumbfounded. What? Several generals jumped up, especially the dwarf Lord Urgar, who was in charge of the frontline defense. Wait. Envoy, I object. Even if the Highland Warriors Group is not directly under the jurisdiction of the Alliance, there's no reason for us to let a Karabo apprentice who doesn't have a military rank in the Alliance to command an army of 2,000 people. However, Duque looked as if he had seen through everything and was unperturbed. Of course, although there probably wouldn't be any King of Draenor drama in the future, but gold would always shine. After transmigrating to the world of Azeroth for so long, Duque was basically certain that those who shone brilliantly in the original history would not be too bad in terms of quality. The problem was that without the tempering given to the hoof in the original history, Duque really did not dare to say whether she would grow to the height of the Archbishop. Anyway, it was Willan who gave the hoof a chance to help her grow, and Duque did not mind him doing it once. Duque ignored Urgar and looked at his boss. Your Majesty Kudrin Wildhammer, do you object to my decision? Object? Object my ass. To object to this doll named Mark was to object to Duque, who was hiding in Karazhan on the other side of the world and playing doll games. Kudrin was too full to be so stupid. Although the dwarves were more straightforward, how could a king be so stupid? Kudrin patted his High Lord on the back. Didn't you complain all day that Illidan's men on the other side of the mountain often come over the mountain to cause trouble for you? Isn't this just right? Anyway, the Draenei can't help in the defensive line. Urgar looked like he was choking. Since his boss said so, what else could he say? The Wildhammer dwarves were famous for their Griffin Air Force, but in fact they still had a lot of land forces. As close friends of the Bronzebeard dwarves, their infantry and cannons were also very good at coordinating. Many times, the Wildhammer dwarves' infantry almost followed the landing point of the cannonball and charged forward. Once they found that there were too many demons, they could directly stop and all lie down. They would wait for the cannoneers who were originally playing with the cannons to adjust the firing rate, then fire another round and then charge again. The Draenei who were not familiar with this tactic were really powerless and could only stare at the back. Rather than letting these Draenei rot, it was more practical to let them go and wipe out the surrounding enemy strongholds. Yurgar was also discouraged. Well, since the special envoy and my king have said so. At this time, Hoof finally reacted and should protest. Who knew, just as she sighed, she found that Duque had already King asked for an official seal from Kudrin and stamped it on the military order. Wait. I haven't agreed yet. Hoof's face turned pale. Please, this is a military order. You must complete it regardless of whether you agree or not, otherwise you will be punished according to military law, Duque said confidently and matter-of-factly. When Hoof still wanted to say something, she was suddenly pulled back by her compatriots. Garrison Officer Murad was a determined warrior. He had helped the Draenei in countless worlds to avoid the Burning Legion's demon army time and time again. He was a role model among the Draenei. His unparalleled combat skills and thunderous methods to uphold justice had earned him the respect of his compatriots. After Shotrath City was safe, this battle-hardened garrison officer was sent by Willan to support the front lines as the representative of the Draenei. Murad spoke. Imriel, we carry the hopes of our compatriots and come to the front lines to fight against evil. If we can't even destroy one of the enemy's sentries, how can we talk about attacking the Black Temple, restoring it to the Temple of Karabaer, and restoring its former glory? His words were completely politically correct. Hoof did not have any room to refute. Her superiors sold her out and her compatriots sold her out, what else could she say? So, Hoof prepared to go to battle with tears in her eyes. Before she left, she gave Duke a tragic look. Her big watery eyes were clearly saying, "Are you sure you're not sending me to my death?" Duque smiled. "No, I have faith in you, Hoof." Chapter 1445. Bu Lang and Kudrin sent their men out of the command post after the Draenei's main force had set off. Bu Lang felt a little strange. Oh, is it worth it to torment a girl like this? Considering the Draenei's lifespan and the fact that they have a long adolescence, she's at most a 15-year-old human girl. Duque rubbed his chin, his expression a little playful. Whenever a country or a race is in danger, there will always be heroes who appear out of nowhere. It's just that some will grow up smoothly while others will grow too slowly and die young. Not every hero is called Duke Marcus. Some heroes look like flowers in a greenhouse before they grow up, and can't withstand the wind and rain. But, you two take a look at Varian. Before the incident with Onyxia, he was nothing more than a well-educated nobleman. Duque's words implied that if it wasn't for his bloodline, Varian wouldn't even have the right to be king. Bu Lang and Kudrin couldn't help but nod. If it wasn't for that cruel life as a gladiator, there wouldn't be a strong-willed Varian today. At the same time, because of Duque's existence and the reintegration of another Varian personality, Varian's excessive violent tendencies were suppressed. Now, anyone could see that Varian was developing into an excellent leader. Not only for Stormwind but also for the entire Alliance. To put it bluntly, if Duque ascended to become a true god and had to abandon the Alliance wouldn't lack a standard-bearer. It wasn't that the queens of the various human kingdoms weren't outstanding, but they all lacked a kind of unity, a kind of boldness that other kings and leaders would approve of. As the most populous and powerful race in the current Alliance, the core of the Alliance was destined to be controlled by humans. Among the human kings, Kalia developed Lordaeron into a logistics country. Most of her energy was actually placed on the people's livelihood and armaments. In fact, after Mograine's retirement and Abendis's disappearance, Lordaeron didn't have a decent commander-in-chief. Tyrion Fordring was only suitable for heroic battles, not commanding. Elucia, if her throne wasn't taken away, she was more like a merchant lady. Jaina was capable, but her ability to see the bigger picture was lacking. On the surface, the Dalajan was in a power vacuum, but in reality, it was under Duque's direct rule. Stormguard's Danath Trollbane. At most, he would become a king on the surface, but in reality he would take charge of an entire region. Leading an army was already this silent man's greatest limit. After much consideration, in the end, Duque was no longer around, and only William, who had grown up, was the most reassuring. However, the two dwarves were still very pleased with Duque's unbiased way of cultivating the seedlings of the various races. Bulang said, "Speaking of which, are you really that confident in letting that little hussy go?" Duque rolled his eyes. "Even Mark Dooku can stand in front of you. What are you worried about?" The two dwarf kings immediately understood. Since Mark Dooku was here, it proved that this was the area covered by the magic net. As long as there was a strong enough magic net node, Duque could send over demigod-level powerhouses at any time, just like in the Serpent Shrine Cavern. The Wildhammer Fortress was the core stronghold for attacking the Shrine of Darkness, so the magic net here was of course of the highest level. The Illidari sentry post next door was just a small hill away. It had to be said that Duque had put in a lot of effort to groom Imriel. But the hussy herself didn't know. 5 kilometers away from the Wildhammer Fortress, the sky suddenly darkened. First, it was a smear of scarlet that gradually dyed the black sky, as if it was a sign of destruction. In a moment, the color began to turn into an extremely disgusting dark green. It was not difficult to imagine what kind of evil existed in the Illidari sentry post in front. Imriel thought about it again and again. He raised his arm twice and finally raised it. That was a signal to stop. The Drenii garrison stopped in unison, and so did the cooperating quasi-military organization. "Garrison Officer Marilat, I think. Should we investigate first?" Imriel said with a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Very wise decision, Commander Imriel. Obviously his position should be higher. As a garrison officer, Marilat had the style of a soldier and the spirit of a warrior. He did not underestimate Imriel, this so-called commander who had come out of nowhere. Then, I'll leave it to you to arrange." Imriel secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Marilat waved his hand and made a gesture. Immediately, the Highland Warriors and another organization called the Aurora Group sent people over. Marilat ordered meticulously, "Thomas, Jared, Commander Imriel, we need to investigate as much as possible without alerting the enemy. Send out your best men. Not only do we need binoculars to observe, but we also need an accurate count of the enemy's numbers and types. It would be better if we could estimate the general strength of the enemy. You have an hour." "Understood." The Drenii's hooves made too much noise. In addition to their taller bodies, they might be good warriors or good paladins, but they were definitely not good thieves. In terms of investigation, the Drenii were no match for the dwarf thieves and elven thieves. The situation was quickly reported back. There were not many enemies at the sentry post, only about 100. The problem was that the enemy was very strong. 30 Illidari terror emissaries, 63 Illidari commandos, the great demon Lothras, the queen of pain Gabrisa. The information is so accurate? Although Imriel had never led troops before, seeing such a detailed report, she still felt as if she had been deceived. Thomas hurriedly explained, "No, Commander, you've misunderstood. We took our seats according to the three-dimensional images in the Encyclopedia of Draenor Demons that the higher-ups gave us." After saying that, Thomas kicked the leg of the mage next to him. The guy grunted and hurriedly took out a projection crystal. Immediately, the image and description of the demons appeared on it. It was clear which ones were the terror emissaries and which ones were the commandos. "Where did you get this information?" Marilat was shocked. Thomas shrugged. "You'll have to ask the big shots of the Alliance who are above the rank of Major General. Perhaps Special Envoy Mark Dooku will know." For some reason this person who was destined to be unable to rely on Duque due to his lack of talent, thought of the mysterious Mark Dooku again. Now, Mark had somehow become a special envoy of the Alliance. This time Thomas guessed correctly. The information came from Duque. Ever since Duque forced the Eridar twins to surrender, all kinds of information had been sent to Karazhan. Chapter 1446. In order to avoid being discovered, the cautious Gemini would of course not give Duque any important information. However, they did not feel guilty at all for selling the scum who had surrendered to Illidan. There were so many demons in the twisting nether that there were hundreds of millions of them. Originally, these low-level demons who were not directly under a lord would not be taken seriously, so the Gemini sold them to their heart's content. His background was completely exposed. From their appearance, to their level, to their special skills. God damn it, they had everything. Anyway, if there was anything, they could just say that the Infernal Affairs had stolen the information from 10,000 years ago. After all, demons who could become elites and above basically had a lifespan of more than 10,000 years. Imriel saw that the other side had a smurf boss and an elite. She estimated and frowned. Marad was the only heroic powerhouse on her side who could fight. If they rushed in recklessly, it was very likely that they would suffer heavy casualties. Do we have any reinforcements? At this moment, Imriel's face was no longer as lively as before. It was full of seriousness. After all, she was carrying the lives of more than 1,000 of her compatriots on her shoulders. If she made a mistake in her command, it would be the end of these compatriots. Yes, Marad replied. The higher-ups have prepared artillery support for us from the flying warships. Since they are not directly under the alliance, once we call for reinforcements, once we win, a portion of the merit will be given to them. Imriel seemed very decisive. Compared to the illusory merit and fighting against demons who would not really die, she valued the lives of her compatriots more. At this moment, Duque, who was observing Imriel and Karazhan, rubbed his chin with a very playful expression on his face. Master, do you think this little Drenii girl is very promising? Vasht, who was standing beside him, smiled like a flower. Do you want me to help Master teach her a few moves? Help Master cultivate a capable female subordinate. Duque rolled his eyes at Vasht, his eyes full of warning. Vasht suddenly stopped talking. Vasht was indeed a capable and good maid. The problem was that this girl was born in the most corrupt High Elven palace, and had been in the deep sea for almost 10,000 years. Many things would become complicated because of her habitual thinking. Duque didn't want such a good seedling to be led astray by Vasht. How should he put it? With him, Duque, there definitely wouldn't be any king of Draenor. Using his own methods to nurture Imriel, who was supposed to be successful, the sense of accomplishment was no less than building a complete and majestic fortress with his bare hands. Duque said, if you're that free, go prepare the second phase of the plan. If you really fail, I'll skin you alive. Yes, yes, yes. I will obey Master's orders. Seeing that Duque was in a bad mood, Vasht tactfully lifted her white maid's skirt. She did not leave but stood quietly to the side. Vasht noticed that Vanessa, who was always in the way of her and Duque's game of a bite of the tongue, was no longer there. In the Moon Shadow Valley, Imriel's expression was very interesting. Because the person who popped out of the magic communication mirror was a Pandaren. Wow! Is this the first time you've seen a Pandaren? We don't live on the main continent of Azeroth, so it's normal for the Drenii who have just joined the Alliance not to have seen us. Alright, enough with the nonsense, dear Commander Imriel. The Stormwind Special Experimental Unit, Royal Brothel Team, is at your service. Pfft. At this moment, Hoof spat. Although she knew that those organizations that were officially recognized or subordinate to the Alliance had all kinds of strange names, she did not expect that other than the reliable Highland Warriors team, there would be such unreliable ones. What? Hoof's eyes widened as she stared at the slightly wretched Pandaren in the communication mirror. Sorry. Sir Commander, although our 3 flying warships are all unofficially equipped warships, the name Royal Brothel Team was accidentally mentioned by the great commander, Duke Marcus. We all thought it was very good, so we used it. After a quick and simple explanation from the captain with the strange name of Nicholas June Yuki, Imriel barely knew the origin of the Royal Brothel. Since ancient times, in the official literature and records of all the human navies, every warship was described as a female she. So every ship was a ship girl. But you have to think about it this way. When you meet these cute girls, do they keep saying that this is your wife and that is your wife all the time? Is that right? Can't their wives be OXX? If you play with these ships alone, then they are your harem. But ships can't be operated by one person. That means you are not the only one playing, so this is a brothel. Jun Yuki waved his black bear paw and said loudly, so, the great commander Duke Marcus said on the deck of the stupid Queen Ilia, that, this is the great royal brothel, not an air force that you can come and go as you please. At this moment, Imriel was devastated. She really did not know that humans and Pandaren would have such strange fetishes. In her young heart, a big warning exclamation mark was drawn on the commander of the Alliance whom she had never met, but who gave her an extremely unreliable feeling. At the same time, whether it was Duque in Karazhan or Mark Dooku in the Wildhammer Fortress, because of the telepathic synchronization, they both flipped the table in front of them. Bullsh*T. I said at that time, this is the Royal Air Force, not a brothel that you can come and go as you please. Someone come. When this guy called Jun Yuki comes back, give him an oxygen tank and let him swim in a cesspool for an hour. If Duque was not the leader of the Alliance, this kind of thing could really be a big deal. The royal family and the royal family were two different things. Royal was a title that only Thoradin the Great Arather Empire could use. Of course, after the people below heard that Duque had settled multiple queens, they also jokingly called Duque the emperor. If it was not the emperor who could settle multiple queens, it was another matter to say that the Royal Air Force of the Storm family was a brothel. Duque hated this group of people with big mouths. Of course, Junmyuki was definitely not the only one who talked nonsense, but he could only kill the chicken to warn the monkey. In fact, the so-called Royal Brothel team was a special combination of 3 ships: the special experimental flying battleship, War-Weary, the stupid Queen Ilya, and the flying battlecruiser, Hood. These 3 ships abandoned the traditional multi-story cannons of the Alliance's previous flying battleships and sea battleships. They went from pursuing firepower density to a more modern firing mode, where only the top deck had cannons. Chapter 1447. On one hand, the cutting-edge rotating turrets allowed the warships to carry larger caliber cannons with a wider firing range. The traditional multi-layered cannons could only aim at a pitiful 15 degrees. On the other hand, there were only a few small caliber cannons at the front and rear of the ship. On the other hand, sealing the lower deck was more beneficial to the survival of the crew. The open multi-layered cannons increased the firepower density, but at the same time, it made the warship more fragile. As long as it hit a certain area, it could easily spread the damage to the armory and cause a chain of explosions. In other words, the cannons that were filled with cannons were like a living target for the armory. As the war continued, under Duque's special reminder, the Alliance also noticed the situation. Creating the cutting-edge cannons took a short time, but to train a qualified adult soldier, there had to be an adult, and it had to be a well-educated adult. Illiterates could not handle cannons, especially the new cannons with a firing calibration system. Even with the help of the system to calculate the trajectory, there were many times when the system was not accurate, and the cannoneer's experience had to be used to correct it. This time the new flying warships were used as test subjects. All 3 warships were equipped with unique cannons. War-Weary's sharpshooter system had the Alliance's cutting-edge tactical auxiliary aiming system, which was inclined towards long-range precision attacks. Hood's Glory system was inclined towards continuous firepower and wide-area damage. The specially equipped chain reloading mechanism made the cannons more automatic. And Ilya's Queen's Command system was similar to Duque's radar system before he transmigrated. She would scan the entire battlefield repeatedly and collect all kinds of information on the battlefield. She would then link it with War-Weariness and Hood's fire control system, hoping to increase the firepower, accuracy, and even the dodging rate of the warships. As for the performance of these 3 cutting-edge warships, it needed to be tested in actual combat. Bringing them to the main battlefield was something that the Alliance would only do when it was on the verge of destruction. If the conditions were right, a low-intensity battle would be a very suitable experiment. The Drenii would not use cannons to coordinate because they had never seen it before. Obviously, Iroh was an exception. As the first Drenii to follow a certain Dew who went by the alias Mark, Iroh could be said to have seen the world. She was well aware of the terrifying power of modern artillery. After looking at the sketch sketched out by the scout and carefully asking about the terrain of that place, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Imriel gave an order. Thomas, I need your best archers to take the bottles of holy water and shoot them at these points. Retreat immediately after shooting the arrows. The Illidari outpost was actually built on the ruins of a Drenii palace. There were broken tiles everywhere in the ruins, and only a few houses had tiles to cover their heads. As a sentinel to guard the Moonshadow Valley, there were not many people stationed here. It was purely because there was an energy node here that Illidan had ordered the demons to set up a sentry post here. Not long after, a few arrows were shot into the open space of Illidar's sentry post. The Illidari commandos, who were actually demon guards, revealed puzzled expressions. They weren't very intelligent, so they couldn't understand why an arrow with holy light would be shot into the empty space. Of course, this didn't stop them from reacting quickly. Enemy attack. Mournful shouts in the Abyss Devil language resounded throughout the entire sentry post. Almost all the demons rushed out with weapons in their hands. But there was nothing. Should we give chase? A commando asked the Terror Emissary. The Terror Emissary was a dreadlord that wasn't strong enough, but in a small sentry post like this, the Terror Emissary was already the commander. After spreading out his senses, he still couldn't sense any traces of the enemy. Finally, the Terror Emissary ordered, "Stay alert." As he hadn't directly confronted the Alliance before, he didn't know that at that moment, 12,000 meters away, 3 warships hovering in the air were in an uproar. The coordinates have been transmitted. An aide shouted. The Pandaren captain, Jun Muki, waved his large claw. Compare the terrain data and try to stabilize the hull. Activate the auxiliary correction system. Wind direction, 12. 3 degrees to the east, level 3 wind. Alright. The calibration balloon has been released. Everyone listen up. The main cannon will fire in 60 seconds. In a small valley 2 kilometers away from the Illidari outpost, Imriel was extremely nervous. She was wearing a brand new armor, which in theory could protect her body better than her previous leather armor. However, she knew that in front of demons that were stronger than the beast men, her superior grade plate armor was like paper. The only thing they could rely on was the support of the Alliance's cannons. Imriel was very afraid that the enemy would find them and suddenly rush out to engage them in hand-to-hand combat. If that was the case, the Alliance's warships would not be able to open fire under such circumstances. 5 minutes felt as long as 5 centuries. Finally, there seemed to be thunder in the distant sky, and there was a muffled sound. Soon, every single soldier of the Alliance army could hear it even more clearly. It was the scream of death that came from the sky. The huge cannonball at high speed was like a burning meteor, whistling through the sky as it rushed towards the ground. There was no chance for the demons at the Illidari outpost to escape. The violent and terrifying cannonball had already exploded at the outpost. The strong flash meant that the explosion caused by the new gunpowder was ruthlessly and efficiently crushing all living beings within the range of the explosion. It was as if the earth had been punched by the invisible fist of God, and a huge crater similar to that of a meteorite appeared on the ground. Debris and mud splattered in all directions, and the aftermath of the explosion destroyed everything in its path. The demons of the Burning Legion had fire attributes, so the explosion did not cause much damage to them. Originally, they would only receive damage from the impact, but the gunpowder had some Naru's holy light substance, so it was a different story. Instinctively afraid of the holy light, the demons that were not directly hit by the cannonball fled in all directions. At this time, a few terrifying Illidari emissaries stood up from the crater. They cursed in Eridar, "Calm down. Idiots. Find the enemy immediately." Their efforts were destined to be in vain. An attack over 12,000 meters away was already terrifying enough, not to mention that the Royal Kiln team was hovering on the other side of the mountain, and the cannonball flew over the top of the mountain in a parabola. There was not a single demon that had a perception of 12 kilometers away. They could at most roughly sense which direction the cannonball was coming from. They also did not know that the cannonball just now was just a test shot. In order to adjust the shooting parameters for the subsequent cannonball. Chapter 1448. Half a minute later, there was an earth-shattering explosion. The energy from the high explosive shells tore the entire Illidari outpost apart, and a few huge chunks of earth the size of hills were blown into the sky. Looking at the demonic limbs and flesh flying in the sky, the Drenii troops who were lying in ambush 2 kilometers away were completely speechless. Imriel felt the tremors from the ground, and she found herself crying. She could not help but pray in fear and anxiety. Even though the target was the Drenii's nemesis, she was still very uncomfortable. The continuous bombardment lasted for 3 minutes, and when it stopped there was only dead silence. Imriel smiled bitterly. "By the way, do we even have a chance to fight?" Merritt said firmly, "It is the commander's duty to confirm the results of the battle." Imriel made a decision. "Then let's go. If there are still demons who are not dead, it is our duty to give them the final blow." After saying that, Hoof turned around and gave an order to the army's mages. "Tell the Royal Kiln team to get ready. In 10 minutes, we will need to coordinate with the infantry cannons." Running 2 kilometers in 10 minutes was not considered steep, and it was considered a relatively fast armed march. But Imriel had no choice. At first, she did not dare to let her troops within a kilometer. After all, the new cannons did not hit the enemy for the first time. Instead, a stray bullet took the lives of an entire team of Drenii infantry. This was not something unusual. When they reached 500 meters away from the outpost, the hill that they saw through the binoculars had been shaved off a few meters. As expected, not all of the evil demons were dead. At a place visible to the naked eye, a rift tore open in the nearby air, and some horrible things rushed out of it impatiently, winged demons and bewitching succubi. They roared angrily, waving yellow-green demonic flames and powerful magical energy in their hands. Fire. With the first experience, Imriel was more confident in the accuracy of the 3 battleships. After another round of earth-shattering explosions, the Drenii troops, under the leadership of Merritt, launched an all-out attack on the remaining demons. In the name of the holy light, die demons. This was one of the few Draenei elites left. Many Draenei were sacrificed when they were escaping from the demon hunters sent by Kil'jaeden. Although veterans who could live for more than 5,000 years were not as rare as phoenix feathers and Chelan horns, there weren't many of them either. Mal Lad was one of them. There weren't many of his former comrades left. Those who gathered around him were all elites who had participated in the previous war with the orcs. They stood guard on the bridge outside Shotrath City, facing the terrifying orcs that were 100 times stronger than them without any fear. Even the insufferably arrogant Blackrock clan had once suffered defeat in front of them. This was an army forged from steel. Every single one of them had a will of steel. Under the name of the Holy Light, they were willing to sacrifice their lives for the Holy Light and their comrades at any time. They sang a hymn unique to the Draenei and charged into the center of the dust-filled battlefield, their bodies shining with golden light without turning back. Imriel could have stayed behind, but she chose to merge herself into the vanguard and followed closely behind Mal Lad. She held a short hammer with a shiny purple head in her right hand and a nimble oval-shaped shield in her left. She took a lunge step that was unique to the Draenei's calves and rushed towards the enemy. In the midst of the dust, she saw a satyr struggling on the ground. Although it was heavily injured, with one of its left legs missing in the bombardment, it still fiercely used its claws to tear off the entire left arm of a Draenei warrior. Ah! The male Draenei warrior screamed in pain and launched a counterattack against the satyr, but was blocked by a claw. The result of countless combat training was that Imriel's movements would not change at all. She kicked hard and flew forward like an arrow. Seeing the opportunity, she swung her war hammer mercilessly towards the satyr's head. At that most appropriate moment, that seal of command exploded, causing Imriel's hammer strike to have additional holy damage. Ah, Imriel was desperate. At that moment she really did not think about the consequences if she did not hit the satyr. In fact, she almost missed. The satyr tilted his head at the moment when his head was about to be hit. If she had not subconsciously tilted her hammer, the hammer would have probably brushed past the satyr's ear by a few millimeters. Fortunately, with that tilt, she felt as if she had hit something heavy. In the eyes of this Karabear apprentice who had never been on the battlefield, a quarter of the satyr's ferocious face was blown away. The scene of flesh and blood splattering and the scene of brains splattering was probably something she would not forget for a long time. Strangely, she had never heard that some warriors would feel nauseous after their first kill. She was somewhat calm and even a little excited. I did it. I really did it. I have passed judgment on those fallen ones who persecuted my people. Hoof screamed in her heart. Her nimble eyes darted around and immediately caught a glimpse of another demonic guard who was trying to kill a human swordsman not far away. Without hesitation, sanction flew out of her hand. The holy energy flowed along her hand and directly hit the demon's brain, causing it to be paralyzed for a short 3 seconds. Taking advantage of this rare opportunity, the human swordsman roared and swung the giant sword in his hand, chopping off the head of the burly demon that was half a body taller than him. In the Wildhammer Fortress, the big shots who saw this scene through the magic surveillance screen were amazed. Bulang said, "Not bad, this little hoof. If not for her inexperience at the beginning, I would not have been able to confirm that this was her first time on the battlefield." Kudrin took a sip of liquor. This talent does not seem to be any worse than Abendis back then. As a new recruit, this was already a very high evaluation. Marshal Abendis was never known for his strength, that was because he had the 5 Silver Saints above him. There were too many top-notch people, so he was forced to be rated as a second-rate knight. Kudrin's evaluation of Imriel was not low. Duque smiled faintly. The better Imriel performed, the more it proved that his foresight was unique. In his mind, Hoof was an important healer knight in the hero squad in the future. Of course, if he could develop her commanding talent, that would be even better. To be honest, before today he really did not think that she would have this bit of talent in coordination with the infantry. Chapter 1449. Now Duque had seen everything he wanted to see. He was very satisfied with the results of Imriel's first battle. He was not interested in watching the rest of the battle. After all, this kind of low-level hand-to-hand combat was like chickens pecking at each other. You peck me, I'll peck you back. Moreover, the ones fighting were paladins. It would be strange if it was exciting. He remembered that before he transmigrated, there was a paladin in milk armor and a commandment priest who had a flag in a duel. After fighting for 10 minutes, they found out that their health and mana bars were basically full. They did not even lose half of their health, let alone kill each other. In the end, the two idiots decided the winner by throwing dice. Well, one of them was Duque's priest. Of course, Duque's priest also had the reputation of the king of duels in Mindful Port. Whoever dueled with Duque's priest on the dock, the righteous and kind duel would control the opponent's mind and throw them into the water. Then he would use the righteous holy magic to shamelessly. Oh no, it would be the righteous iron fist of light. Anyway, if the opponent wanted to swim ashore, they would be out of the duel circle, and the system would declare Duque the winner. Duque could even sit on the boat and anger the opponent half to death because he would have to wait one more lap for the boat to cross the sea. In the end, Duque's notoriety spread far and wide, and no one was willing to duel with him in Mindful Port. Duke's attention was no longer on the monitor. Instead, he turned his attention to the documents. Although he was hiding in Karazhan, as long as he still had the title of the Alliance commander, he had to deal with a lot of chores. As long as he did not go missing, these kinds of trivial matters would come to him. After all, no leader in the Alliance had the ability to deal with hundreds of documents at the same time like Duque, and whether it was applications or opinions, he would never make a mistake. As an engineering student, Duke's major was decathlon, and he wasn't proficient in any of them. From boilers to automation, from power distribution to engineering budgets, there was everything. Thanks to the overbearing system elf, all the knowledge that Duke had read in the past, even the knowledge that he thought he had forgotten, was dug up by the system from a dusty corner and applied to it. Sigh. I can't help it. Who told me to have such a useless host? The system elf complained from time to time. Shut up. Duque rolled his eyes. With the help of the system, Duque alone was equivalent to a logistics department of 300 people. In addition, many things had to be approved by the Supreme Commander, so this ability was even more precious. Before Duque appeared, logistics was a black hole. Not to mention the so-called logistics of the old tribes, where they could eat wherever they went. That was a typical example of living off the mountains, living off the rivers, and living off the soil. In any case, locusts were like locusts, eating whatever they could get their hands on. Once they encountered a barren area, they would be finished before the enemy even attacked. No one could manage the logistics on the Alliance's side, and no one could manage it. According to the feudal system, the management of garbage warehouses, and the calculation method that didn't even have Arabic numerals, the king himself didn't even know how much food could be transported to the battlefield. There were even cases of logistics personnel embezzling food and selling it to the merchants who accompanied the army. Then the merchants added a discount on the price and sold it to the king. The merchants were even rewarded by the king. After Duque came to power, especially after magic communication was popularized, logistics was no longer a lucrative job. First of all military supplies were standardized. During research and development, he could let the dwarves let their imaginations run wild. Once production was decided, there would be at most 2 common versions of the same type of equipment and 1 backup version. Only these 3 versions had production lines. Nothing else was made. It was like a German mechanized infantry division in World War II on Earth that had more than 10 types of armored vehicles, or a certain Japanese machine gun that used clips to feed bullets. Duque scoffed at such a stupid idea. Only by standardizing and reducing the variety could the logistics burden be minimized. Next was a more scientific method of calculation. Entry and exit were all calculated, and it required the signatures or seals of the warehouse manager, the supervisor, and the person who extracted it. If one signature was missing, only the other 2 would be needed. Next was dry storage. Who didn't know how to do that? Yes, the Alliance sent clear instructions to teach the people how to choose warehouses, where to dig holes, how to dry and ventilate, how to prevent rain and moisture during transportation. Finally was the research and development of new weapons. With the development of technology, there were always some things that were awesome when they first came out, but were immediately destroyed when the opponent was changed. For example, in the Second Battle of the Dark Portal, the Alliance's FFF Regiment Flamethrower still had many orcs waking up in the middle of the night. They even shouted, "FFF Regiment is here," and there was a tragic scene of old orcs collectively exploding into a frenzy. Now that the war was advancing, when the Alliance took down Hellfire Fortress, the once invincible Flamethrower in group battles, urban battles, and whatnot suddenly became useless. Who would be the one to destroy a Naga that played with water? Hellfire, which relied on fire to survive, was going to use fire to spray it? What a joke. These days there weren't many demons that were afraid of fire. As a result, the flamethrowers suddenly went from being the MVP of regular battles to being marginalized. But with a single order from Duke and a simple modification blueprint, the flamethrower, who had almost become a passerby, became a celebrity that was loved by everyone and blossomed with flowers. Demon. Drink the water that washes your feet. The domineering shout made everyone tremble. Golden water droplets fell from the sky. Colorless and odorless, but full of a holy aura. The Draenei who were in the middle of a bloody battle were all shocked, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. That's right, what was sprayed was naturally holy water from the holy light creature, Naru, washes their feet. The nature of the flamethrower was to spray liquid fuel further using hydraulic pressure. Anyway, spraying fuel was the same, spraying holy light washes was also the same. As long as the igniter on the nozzle was removed, it would be over. The Alliance's flamethrower, the second spring, was that simple and violent. This thing could even be used by new soldiers who had trained for half a day. But the effect of using it was surprisingly good. Originally, when playing with a flamethrower, one had to pay attention to position and wind direction. If a moron sprayed upwind, that would be a classic example of playing with fire and getting burned. But spraying holy water was basically harmless to the Alliance soldiers. Only a small portion of the Forsaken would be hit. As long as they weren't afraid of wasting it, they could use it as a water festival. When the human body came into contact with holy water, it would naturally disinfect and heal wounds. Demons that touched this thing were in trouble. It was like acid-level stuff. Many demons that didn't die under the bombardment of heavy artillery fell to the ground screaming and dying when they touched the holy water. The Draenei guards swarmed up and greeted them with their holy light warhammers. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.